up, let's give a big welcome to Judge Toby Hampson. Thank you.
Man, I wasn't nervous, and then I heard all the great questions going to Judge Wilson, so now I'm a little nervous. Well, good afternoon, Polk County Democrats. I am Judge Toby Hampson, one of your statewide elected North Carolina Court of Appeals judges. It's been an absolute honor to serve you over the last 7.5 years. But let me tell you, I am so ready to run for re-election and take the fight for justice to get it back here in North Carolina. Because we know these are anxious times when it feels like every day our fundamental freedoms and constitutional rights are under constant threat. Things that maybe we've taken for granted, like due process, freedom of speech, and even the right to vote. But I think these times call for us to stand up and be brave and bold in the face of injustice. And that's why, last year, Republican colleagues on my court were willing to throw out over 68,000 votes in the race for state Supreme Court, including our neighbors right here at home who were trying to vote early or absentee, but also our military members serving our country overseas. I was proud to stand in dissent and say, you don't change the rules of an election after those votes have been cast, counted, and canvassed. And the thing about it is this. Ultimately, it took a federal judge appointed by Donald Trump to agree with me and say what our state Supreme Court majorities and Court of Appeals majorities were doing was unconstitutional. Think about that for a second. Our state Supreme Court, our Court of Appeals, those courts that are there to protect and defend our constitutional rights are being told that they themselves are acting in a manner that is unconstitutional. I'm running for re-election because we need judges that will stand up for the rule of law. Judges that will stand up and defend your constitutional rights and fundamental freedoms. Judges that understand our system of justice will only work when it serves the people and not extreme partisan agendas. And what do we see coming out of our courts recently? We see decisions that throw out fair maps. Decisions that throw out 30 years of litigation just designed to obtain basic funding for public education. And yet, cases designed to throw out your votes. All the while, issuing decisions that allow utility companies to raise your rates, to allow corporations to dump waste into our waterways, and even decisions that roll back your basic right to your day in court before a jury of your own. We got to win these judicial elections in 2026. This is why your Democratic judicial slate was running, to uphold the principles of the rule of law and bring justice back to the people. Right? So let's talk about what's at stake in 2026. On our North Carolina Supreme Court, our current makeup of that court, it's a 7-member court. It's currently made up of 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats. In 2024, we got Justice Riggs elected. In 2026, we have to get Justice Neil Earls reelected to the North Carolina Supreme Court, just to maintain that 5-2 number. But then in 2028, there are 3 seats that come up on our North Carolina State Supreme Court. By winning those seats, we actually get to take back a majority on our North Carolina Supreme Court by 2030. Why does our Supreme Court matter? Why does that race matter? Let me give you an example. In 2022, the North Carolina Supreme Court, with a Democratic majority, held that extreme partisan gerrymandering violates the North Carolina state constitution. The ultimate result of that ruling was that in 2024, North Carolina had congressional maps that were divided 7 Republicans to 7 Democrats. A number that sounds awfully lot like North Carolina's population, right? But Republicans took control of the state Supreme Court in the midterms that very year. One of the first things they did was repeal that decision and say, oh gosh, no, courts aren't going to get involved in extreme partisan gerrymandering. The result was the 10-4 match that we had in 2024, 10 Republicans to 4 Democrats, lost 3 seats in North Carolina. That's probably the difference between having Speaker Hakeem Jeffries in the House of Representatives right now. That's probably the difference between Trump's budget bill passing and not passing. So you can see right there, there's one decision of our North Carolina Supreme Court that has had immense impact, not just on the citizens of North Carolina, but on our entire nation. These races matter. Let's talk about the Court of Appeals, Michael. We're a 50-member court. We have 12 Republicans and 3 Democrats currently. Those last 3 Democratic seats are the ones that are on your ballot this fall. Our colleagues and opponents are talking about having a clean sweep of the courts. But we can't let that happen. We've got to hold on to these 3 seats in November. And when we do that, we have the opportunity to then pick up 5 seats on that court in 2028. Again, taking back a majority on the Court of Appeals and really bringing some balance to both of our appellate courts. But why does the Court of Appeals matter? Well, the North Carolina Court of Appeals decides cases from all 100 counties in North Carolina, cases civil and criminal. In most cases, we are the court of last resort. Most cases don't go up to our state Supreme Court. You know, the General Assembly took away, used to have a right to appeal. If you had a 2-1 decision, you had to dissent, you could automatically appeal that to the Supreme Court. General Assembly took that right away. So now, for the most part, our state Supreme Court gets to decide which cases it takes and which ones it doesn't, which really underscores the importance of the Court of Appeals as the court of last resort. But we're the ones deciding cases that, impact your voting rights and access to the ballot. But also, what happens if you get hurt at work? What happens if you're going through a divorce, fighting for custody of your kids? What if you're an indigent parent whose rights are at risk? You're a small business owner being sued. You get hurt at work. You get hurt in a car accident, medical malpractice, property rights. We decide zoning cases, property tax cases, cases that impact what you pay for utilities. So it's the Court of Appeals that's making these decisions that impact the lives of North Carolinians on an everyday basis. You know, it's fine. When people find out I'm a judge, usually one of the first things they say is, well, I hope I never have to appear in front of you. But let me assure you, the feeling's mutual. I hope you never have to appear in front of me either, but that's kind of the point, right? Y'all shouldn't have to be worried about what your courts are doing every day. You should be trusting that your courts are working correctly, working for the people, serving justice, and doing the right thing. So what do we need to do in 2026? You know, Justice Riggs won her race by 734 votes, a statewide race out of over 7 million votes cast. Man, that tells me we've got to be working in every community, in every county, in every precinct, all around the state. Because the great thing about these statewide races is they can't gerrymander a statewide race. Every vote counts, every vote matters so much in these races, and that's why Polk County, you guys are so critical. You know, because of you, Justice Allison Riggs got elected to the North Carolina Supreme Court. Y'all helped do that. And y'all are going to be the ones that help carry us over the line in November. And so we need you as witnesses. You need witnesses to win your court cases. We need witnesses to win these critically important state appellate court races. We need you talking to your communities, your neighbors, your faith groups about why judges matter and why we are the judges that carry your values and why it's so important to vote down the ballot in these races. So here's what we're going to do in 2026. First of all, we're going to re-elect Justice Anita Earls to the North Carolina Supreme Court. We're going to re-elect my good friend Judge John Arrowwood to seat number 1 on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. You've already heard from her, but we're going to elect the amazing Judge Christine Walzek to seat number 3. With your help, with your support, with your contributions, but most importantly, with the power of your vote, I look forward to continuing to serve you on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. I am Judge Toby Hampson. Thank you, Judge Toby Hampson. Okay, great. No questions?
Judge, I have a question.
Sorry.
I wonder if you could give us some I'm wondering if you could give us some insight as to what it's like with your colleagues when you're deciding constitutional questions, such as the ones you mentioned, where the answer is so clear, the fairness is so obvious, and yet you know you're going to be in the minority. What is it like for you?
You know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg talked about writing dissents. And to kind of paraphrase, she said, you're not writing dissents for now, right? You've lost the argument today. You're writing dissents for the future. And you're preserving the law, you're preserving the argument, you're preserving the analysis and the thought. So somebody can pick up on that thread in the future. And I think about the Jefferson Griffin, Allison Riggs case very much. When I wrote that dissent, the majority opinion was maybe 20 to 30 pages. I wrote a 60 to 70 page dissent. Detailing in detail, actually basically what I thought was the death of democracy in North Carolina and why point by point that decision was incorrect. And as proud as I was of the work, in the moment it felt hopeless. It felt like I was just preaching to the future in hopes that somebody would see what happened in North Carolina. And so, in a way, it was so heartening to see a federal judge, not necessarily politically aligned with me, agree with that rationale, agree with that reasoning, right? To me, that really underscored why the rule of law is so important and why it's so important to have judges in North Carolina and on the federal bench and all across this country standing up to be that check, right? To be brave enough to stand up and say, no, that's just wrong.
But will you give us some insight what it's like daily when you meet, I'm sure you're friends with these other judges, and when you know which side they're going to be on, I mean, what's the discussion like? Is it pure politics? They're telling you, hey, sorry, that's the way we're going to vote?
Well, I should say, in most cases that come before our court, we're actually unanimous, right? And I'm able to bring over even my Republican colleagues to agree with me. I've written hundreds of opinions on the court. Most of them are unanimous, and most of them are bipartisan decisions. So we start from that framework. But what we are seeing as these races remain partisan races, right? We do see those kinds of cases become more and more partisan. But the reality is, even in those cases where we disagree, we have to get decisions out. We have to get the decisions out for the people. We don't have the luxury in the General Assembly to be able to pack up and go home without passing a budget, right? We actually have to get the decisions made. So it forces us to actually have to work together, even when we are in disagreement. And even in the Riggs case, as vehemently as we disagreed in that case, and I called out my colleagues for what I said was legislation from the bench, we had to work together to get the opinion out, even though we were disagreeing. So, I fear, unfortunately, we're not having the discussions that we used to have, right? Those good faith debates. We all kind of go to our corners, particularly in a world where we're doing much more virtual work, right? Instead of delivering our opinions around by hand in the courts we used to do, now it goes by email. And so I think we lose a lot of those just organic discussions where we can actually make an impact. And so I fear it is getting worse.